Hey everybody, how you guys doing? Just want to say that, I'm back this week, for the second week in a row, and I am actually outside enjoying this weather. It is going to be about 60 degrees here today, so I figured could do my podcast outside this morning or this afternoon. I say this afternoon because, I did end up sleeping in a little bit later than I would have liked. I forgot to set my alarm. I still got up, made it to church, had a good time at church, good service. But man, this past couple of days has maybe been a little bit more busier than I'd like, but they were all good. I was very productive. I got some stuff done, which lately has been a struggle for me to get up and go out and do stuff, just because with everything that's going on. Maybe on a little bit of a positive side, back when I first got diagnosed and all this, I started getting behind on some of my reading and some of my daily devotions and all that. Well, I am about a day ahead on them now. So it is good that I am all caught up and actually maybe just a smidge ahead. But when I'm done, shooting this, I definitely plan on going out, getting lunch, and doing some more reading. And I just thought I'd give you guys a little bit of an update, on what's been going on this week and how I'm feeling, how I'm doing, because I reckon a lot of you guys probably want to know or, care about some of that. So I may try to incorporate that into this, as I'm getting back into doing the podcast, and getting back to somewhat of the normal, routine for me. So I had a thought earlier this week. I actually had a couple of them, one of which I turned into a long post on Facebook, and I almost, turned it into a video, but I was like tired and didn't want to stay up to do the video, if I'm honest. And I wanted to get my thoughts out, that night. I wanted to, get to express myself that night, and I'm like, I'll just do a blog instead of a video, which, I might be looking for a place online to actually do some writing, for ideas and stuff like that. But the thought that I had that I'm going to try to address today is, do we believe that God is a just or moral God? And if we do believe that he is just and moral, can he have laws or commands that are in some way, shape, or form not moral or not just? You see, because we do like to divide the law and say, oh, this is the moral law, this is the civil law, and this is the ceremonial law, and many Christians will tell you, oh, we only have to do the moral law. But if God is moral, can any of his laws not be moral in some way, shape, or form? I mean, we know that God's ways are higher than our ways, and his thoughts are higher than our thoughts. And when Jesus expanded on the law, And in the Sermon on the Mount, he said things like, you've heard it said, don't, commit adultery. But I tell you, if you look at a woman with lust, you've committed adultery in your heart. So we see that maybe breaking of the commandments, or, at least the moral law, starts here. It starts in our heart. And one of the issues that I have with it being separated, in the moral law, and people elaborate, well, only what's repeated in the New Testament is what we have to obey. Kidnapping, not repeated in the New Testament. It's in the Old Testament, but it's not in the New. So, does that mean kidnapping is not a part of the moral law? There are other things like that, like cross-dressing, mentioned in the Old Testament, not in the New Testament. That if we label what's in the New Testament solely as a moral law, I think it's incomplete. Because we are omitting stuff like that. And then people say, things like, well, the Ten Commandments are the moral law. Okay. Well, the Sabbath is part of the Ten Commandments. So do we keep the Sabbath because it's part of the Ten Commandments and part of the moral law? Well, most Christians, will be like, oh no, we rest in Christ. Christ is our Sabbath, which is fine. But we still see evidence in the New Testament that, the disciples and Christ kept the Sabbath. And even after the resurrection, the disciples kept the Sabbath. They also kept the feast. They also kept some of the ceremonial law. And I get that there are just some things, about, the law we cannot do, like the temple commands. Because we do not have a temple, we cannot keep those commands. Or because I'm not a, Levitical priest, I cannot do the commands that are told to the Levitical priests. And then there are the things that that are part of the law that I might view as moral, but nobody else does. Like the bracelet that I wear, and even the cross on my forehead, or sometimes I'll do the word life up here in Hebrew, because it's, a command in the, Torah. You shall take these words, bind them around your wrist, and write them on your forehead. And then they will serve as a reminder to you. Well, is that a moral law? Is that a civil law? Or is that a ceremonial law? For me, I think it's a moral law. Because it reminds me of, maybe I should treat people, according to the law, or the laws of restoration. If you steal something, you are to restore it, and I think it's usually 5%. Well, is that a moral law? Is it a civil law? Is it a ceremonial law? How does that fit into the category? And I don't have a good answer for any of these questions, other than I think all the law has some aspect of being moral, because God is moral, and He would not give us laws that were not, in some way, some shape, some form, at least a little bit moral. I mean, even if we look at some of the temple laws, like what sacrifices to bring or what is an acceptable sacrifice, that can teach us morality, believe it or not. Because yes, we might not go to the temple, for the sacrifices, but we still think, well, if I'm going to do something and make a sacrifice, what would that look like? I mean, am I supposed to sacrifice, my best, or just some random blind thing, lame thing in my life? And if I'm just sacrificing something blind or lame, is it really a sacrifice? For me, like, going on a fast and, sacrificing by not eating meat, not much of a sacrifice because I'm a vegetarian, However, if I were to sacrifice, some spicy food during my fast, big sacrifice, because I do love spicy things. I do love hot sauce and jalapenos and stuff like that. And that, reflects on my morality, because I'm willing to sacrifice things that matter to me. It speaks to my character. My character as a believer. So yeah, I really don't think there aren't many laws that we have that we can follow, and even some of the ones that we can't, that don't show some aspect of God's justice or morality. And I think the entire law, should be viewed as, in some aspect, being moral or having moral implications within our lives. Because I don't think a just, loving, moral, caring God would give us commands that did not reflect those aspects in Him in some way, shape, or form that would not reflect some morality, or a code of conduct, or how we should behave and act toward one another in some way, shape, or form. And all throughout the Bible, like even in the New Testament, we hear things like the law of the Lord is perfect. We hear things like the law is holy, good, and righteous. We hear the law being spoke of in a positive aspect. Not that it's, done away with. Not that, we can pick and choose what, laws, we want to, keep, or which laws we should obey. Because I don't see any distinction within the Bible itself between the civil, ceremonial, and moral. I think those are man-made, clarifications. I think it's eisegesis, not exegesis, if you will. And it's our guideline, or our how we should live. Rules to live by, if you will. So yeah, I do think the entire law is moral. And another thing I was going to address, and I was thinking about maybe doing this in another podcast, but I think I'll at least bring it up now. If we as Gentiles are grafted into Israel, as part of the, church, it would make no sense to say, well, the natural born son, Israel, has these rules, but the adopted kids, the ones who are grafted in, have these rules over here. Even from a natural perspective, if you adopt a kid, they're going to have the same rules as your natural born kids. It would make no sense to have two separate rules, a set of rules for them, You would expect both the natural born and the adopted to be home by curfew. You'd expect both of them to take off their shoes while in the house, if that's a rule you have. You'd expect both of them to use their inside voices, You would not have two different sets of rules for them. You would have one set of rules. And we see this mentioned briefly some in the Old Testament as well. Like, you shall have, one set of rules for the natural born and the foreigner that lives among you. So yeah, just something for you guys to think about, Just, like I said, I wanted to try my hand at looking at some apologetics type of stuff, and maybe just talk through or work out some of the thoughts that I have on it. But I think I'm going to call it a close and let you guys go. Y'all take care. Goodbye and God bless.